Okay. Good evening. I'd better explain a little bit about our circumstances before I get started. Our internet connection is rubbish. I could speak for weeks on that subject. Openreach have let us down again and again and again, and British Telecom, of course. The combination is a nightmare. I was promised 25 megabytes of upload. We got 13. The following year it was halved. The following year halved again. We now are lucky to get a whole number. If I get 0.8 of a megabyte, I'm thrilled. Anyway, so much for Openreach. I often get asked, where do ideas come from? Where do your ideas come from? And as I'm here talking about how I'm going to paint this new Yes album, the Royal Affair live, and I'm going to be painting it live, I thought I'd start at the very beginning of the process, about where ideas come from and how I get them down on paper. And the ideas come in terms of the subject matter and in terms of the composition, in terms of the colour. There's all kinds of elements to the idea that makes up the finished painting. While I was on tour with Yes, and that was an amazing experience. I mean, we met everybody every night they played, but for the rest of the time, it was very, very random. Everybody was in their own vehicles, everyone was going on their own journey. But it was, for me, a fabulous experience driving all over America. Coming down from Canada, looking at the Niagara Falls, coming into the desert regions. The journey from Phoenix to Las Vegas was singularly amazing. We went past the Red Cliffs, Red Rocks, stopped at Sedona. It's extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, I even quite like the long, straight, everlastingly straight roads of the Midwest. And you sitting there listening to the hum of the tyres or the roar of the tyres or the syncopation, the hiss, whatever, the endless change of sound. But it was the deserts that looked the most amazing. And my idea for this, that I'm playing with and I haven't really crystallized yet, was crossing the desert at night and seeing the glow of a city in the distance. We actually got to Las Vegas still in daylight, but it was that idea of the city at night in the desert. And I thought it would be amazing to be going somewhere much more magical, something incredible, a kind of Shangri-La.
Dad, I'm sorry, it says poor network connection, and I think it's because we've got this going as well, so I'm going to turn this phone off and see if that helps. But if we don't have the connection, no one can see or hear you. Okay, we're good.
Okay, well, some of you may have heard that, but that isn't on the internet.
Let's just try it.
But then we won't have that.
It's working now.
I need a little wax model of Openreach so we can get our revenge. Okay, so that's about as far as I get with an idea. A bit more maybe, I thought night. A lot of the graphics for the Royal Affair tour looked like a night thing. It was that dark background with this, actually the S logos instead of stars, but it could be a night sky, and I'd like to keep that thing. So the most basic of ideas would be, you know, a painting divided somewhere between night sky and foreground, which may also be black. it's about the most passive and boring I could be, but I have worked with things that are that simple. With barely a little more bits of rocks here and here. That's Tales from Topographic Oceans. It is stunningly simple, and it's a big challenge to make something work that's that passive and that simple. It's much easier if the thing is broken up in a different way and is much more dynamic. So, if there's dark shapes crisscrossing the canvas, and you have the subject matter sneaking around it in the background, you get a much more dynamic picture, and it's easier to be startling with a painting if you go for a much more dynamic design. So in this process, I'm looking for a journey at night, possibly in a desert, and in the distance is something. It could be a city glowing, it could be a structure, a single structure, or it could be a visitation of some kind. So that's what I'm kind of imagining. I'm going to do that again. But if there was...
I just want to turn this light off. Can you give me 1 second? I'm not sure how to do it though. Dad, can you help me?
Urgent pause.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So I have hundreds of sketchbooks where I'm just constructing the shape that might dominate the finished canvas. It's interesting to me that when I'm doing this, just in as simple a manner as that, I've got something that looks like it's lit from below or inside. So already that's giving me something interesting to play with. I would like to break it up, so whatever I have here, if that's dark at the top and dark at the outside, that gives it that inner glow, and whatever it is. But if I did something else with it, broke up the structure, that's a very tempting thing to do, to push it into the background. This could be side window of a car, or it could be a tree in the foreground, but it's giving the painting space, and the viewer has to go in it via and around something. So I like the idea of there being a little bit of creative work from the part of the viewer to get into the picture. But for me, it either works or doesn't work at this very simple thumbnail sketch stage. The thumbnail actually is where the picture lives or dies. So I need to get it right with perhaps a dozen or maybe 100 more, maybe. I do just do endless ones until part of it or some part of it makes me think, this is going to work. And if I get to that point, I quickly develop it. And sometimes I get to a point where I think, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. It's really going to work. So this is what I'm looking for now in front of you guys tonight. But it will be what I'll be looking for until I get it. And it might be that it happens in the next second. I wish. It's not really anything. I'm not really drawing anything. It's just a means of breaking up the I guess it's an entirely an abstract thing. I'm making abstract shapes and seeing how they work together. It's I was asked very recently, how do I design a painting? And I did think that there is quite a...
I'm going to do this because apparently this reduces the data, someone has just told me.
Sorry?
If the camera is still, apparently that reduces the data.
Ah,
So let's try that. So we're just going to have this one now.
okay.
Carry on.
So all plans have gone up in the air, right? They've all gone up in smoke. Okay. We're getting there, though. Yes, I was asked how I design a picture, and the first example I gave is the thumbnail sketches making abstract shapes, almost as crude as basic geometry, blocks and lumps and things within a rectangular format. There's another way I work, which is to splash paint all over the canvas, sometimes a monochrome, sometimes multicoloured, and I've got a very colourful abstract painting then. And into that I push the image and the subject matter of what I'm going to paint. But the thumbnail I can't think of an example where I've ever started without it. It is that first tentative step. It says, contrary to all obvious evidence, the brain is actually functioning and I'm moving it forward. I had a professor who once said, don't stare at white paper, that's the kiss of death. Make a mark. And once you've made a mark, make another and make another. And the momentum will get you thinking. And that was a very interesting process for me. And I've had drawing teachers tell you to get a dirty rag and mess up the paper so you're not inhibited by the pristine nature of the place where you're going to be making marks. For me, that was interesting, but I felt not necessary. I was always very keen to make the marks and set that particular process in motion. For me, ideas come when I'm quiet, when I'm not urgently and anxiously trying to drive an idea forward. They come when I'm at peace with myself and quiet. And they come and they develop, but if I can maintain that non-thought state, they come the most fluently. I remember once giving a talk to art students, actually, about the process of drawing. And I said, drawing can be very tedious. You know, you're drawing a subject matter for hour after hour after hour. And it's good to take your mind off things. And I was explaining I listened to the radio or audio books or whatever. But the teachers there were very agitated by the fact that they thought I might think art is all about technique. And my response was that I didn't believe art is only about technique, but I did believe you can't have great art without great craftsmanship. But what the thought I gave them was, from a Japanese martial art, from kendo, was that you train the hand, so the hand in turn trains the mind. And that was a very important insight for me, because that is how it feels. If I'm talking, if I'm in a conference, if I'm listening to the radio, if I'm listening to a story, and I've got a pencil or paintbrush in my hand, I don't have to ask it to do something. It just does it. And I just look in and occasionally say, oh, that's interesting. It works. Once the hand is trained, it works. And that is really part of the process. I mean, I'm thinking, because I'm talking to you guys, but at some point, I'm going to let that go. And I'm just going to make marks. And hopefully, by the next time we talk, which will be Friday, I'm checking the time.
That's where that needs to be if anyone sees it. Sorry.
I see. You can see we do this all the time. We've got it absolutely polished. By the next time we do it, I'll be starting to paint, and that means that I haven't finalised how it will look, but I'm confident enough that I'm getting there. And while I've been talking about this idea of crossing the desert and seeing that glow, that has made me think a lot and conjuring up all kinds of images. So I'm very excited to get on with that aspect of it. But I'm not sure what that shape is. Is it crystalline? Is it organic? Well, these are just incredibly crude blobs. They will get smoother and they will get sharper, and then they will lose their integrity and go loose again. It's all a process of trying, letting it evolve, thinking, oh, okay, I like that, but I don't like this, and trying it till it all starts hanging together. And I like working this way because eventually it always does hang together. It can be quick. It can take, we've been talking for about 15 minutes, or it can take an hour, 2 hours, or 10 hours, or 2 or 3 days. But if it's 2 or 3 days, it's because I'm not working at it all the time. It's much quicker than that as a process. To pull that idea out of the air and transform it into marks on paper.
Okay, we've had some requests for zooming in. Anything you want us to see?
Well, I haven't mentioned this on this, but send a request.
Sorry. It's me. God, I'm so bad at this. I just filmed me. I can't zoom in, so Dad, you're going to have to hold it up closer.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, these are the. I did say I would answer questions, but that's kind of dependent on us being able to master the technology enough to get to them.
Well, no, I'm getting lots of comments on people want to see closer up. We've got some questions. I guess what will be good is if you put your questions in the comments with a question mark at the end, I can ask Dad your questions for you.
Right.
Someone says, my video keeps freezing. Is it just me? Probably not. No. Probably it's us.
Yes, sadly it's most likely to be us.
But if you have questions about art...
Yes. If you have solutions about technology, that would be wonderful. So these fit in my pocket, and it's I just walk around with them.
Show them up close to the camera and a little bit
Okay.
longer.
Extremely rudimentary, but sometimes there's more detail. And
okay, we're getting lots of questions.
so, go on.
So what are you working on now?
This is a real job. This is really what I'm working on now. Presently we'll stop, but I won't stop thinking, I won't stop doodling, I won't stop all that process. And as I said, by the time we next do this, which will be Friday, I will be at the point where I'll be painting. If not on the finished painting, I'll be doing colour roughs, and there will be something which might suggest the finished painting. I think it will, but it might still be vague enough that it can transform into something else during the process of doing it.
Okay, we're going to have to answer questions a bit quicker because they're going very quickly. Do you get input from the band as to the design of the cover?
Sometimes I get input from the band. When we did the last album cover for Heaven and Earth, I got given a title, and I got a request from Steve for something more geometric in the treatment of the logo, which is how it turned out in actual fact. What I did with the Heaven and Earth title was I was looking at the quote from Hamlet about something beyond your philosophy, Horatio, something incredibly huge and weird in the background, but hidden by a very dramatic and colourful foreground. Something you couldn't quite see what was going on, but it was huge and scary. So that was the idea behind that. And I remember explaining to the band, and there was baffled looks, and the question arose, but what is Heaven and Earth? And I said, it's the title. You guys gave it to me. They said, no, it's something else entirely. Fortunately, there was a general agreement that we'd stay with that title. But yeah.
Okay, Dad, sorry, we're getting lots of people saying the volume is going in and out.
Yes, sorry.
I don't know what we can do about that.
Yes, this is OpenReach. As I said, this is rubbish. Not much we can do about that. It's extremely exasperating, the quality of this. We're going to have to find an alternative or a supplementary way of doing it by this time on Friday. I'm so sorry about the quality of this. There was a choice about doing this in my studio where I have everything around me, or going somewhere where there was a better signal. And perhaps wrongly, I chose the studio. But we have to find a workaround for the technology.
Okay, a couple of people want to know if the music influences the covers or the lyrics.
From the very first time I met Yes, I never heard the music for the current project. When I went into the Advision Studios went to talk about the Fragile album cover, I'd listened to the Yes album. I'd heard The Worm, and I thought it was an amazing piece of music. But I had no idea what they were going to record, and nor did they, because they hadn't started. So I had to start work before they'd started recording, and way before they'd finished recording. And that has always been the way. The first time there was a different procedure was when they did when I worked on their first retrospective album or first live album. Then I did know the music. But when they're doing a new studio album, no. But in the case of this project, yes, I will know the music. I was on tour with them. I probably heard, well, yes, most of every night they played.
I'm just going to try moving this closer to you.
Okay.
And see if the mic picks that up better. And then if you show anything, you hold it up.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, so more questions, please. I hope the sound is better from now. If you could keep your questions to one sentence, and then I can read them quickly and read them to Dad. Most of the comments are asking if I'm having my thumb over the mic.
I can vouch her thumb is not over the mic. This is still OpenReach and British Telecoms. Complete rubbish.
What's your favourite Yes cover?
Yeah, I really like the Fragile one, but I guess Relaya. I much prefer the title Gates of Delirium, but Relaya probably. Tales was a big deal for me. the Pathways painting in the Yes Songs album was a big deal. It changes, you know, from minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day. So it's not a fixed thing.
A couple of people want to know what's the story behind Fly From Here.
Okay. That was a series of paintings I started before Freyja. And I was working on an album called Fly From Here. I'm trying to remember the date. When I first started work on what became the drama album. When I did the drama album, the original title that I actually drew into the design was Fly From Here. So Fly From Here was originally intended to be on the drama album and the title of the album. The paintings, though, as I say, that green marble background was something I did around 1970, and I'd always wanted to finish it. And when we were doing Fly From Here, it seemed the perfect background for me to start working on ideas of Fly From Here.
So someone else asked, what was the inspiration behind your style?
My style?
Your style.
I don't think I had any inspiration to have a style. The style, for most artists, evolves from them trying to have no style and trying to aim at some kind of perfection, and style is often what happens when you fail at perfection. And I think that's certainly my situation. I do it as well as I can, but the style, the signature, the bits that you recognize are, when we're not talking about subject matter, but when we're talking about technique, is when I don't get it perfect, which is pretty much all the time.
A couple of people have asked, will you be working with John Anderson in the future on anything?
You know, I think I'm going to avoid religion, politics, and questions about how Yes is going to be in the future.
Who's your favourite? Oh, sorry.
John wrote to me a couple of days ago about something on his album. He didn't ask me to do the cover, but he asked me about the video that somebody else was doing. And I'm in communication with John about that. So, yeah, I would say we have a friendly relationship.
Do you think drawing from life is important?
I think drawing from life is the most important thing. If I was recommending anyone who wanted to do art of any kind, even if it was industrial design, which is what I ended up doing, life drawing is the toughest lesson to learn. It's the hardest thing to do, and therefore the most important thing to do. And fortunately for me, I did get life drawing. I was doing industrial design, and we did have at least one period a week, sometimes more, doing life drawing. Unfortunately for me, I needed even more than that. It was, yeah, it's really, really the most useful thing you can do.
Roger, please talk about your covers for the Steve Wilson versions of the Yes records.
Well, that particular painting was literally like we've been talking about, and I had...
Can you do that further to the right?
I have to work out which is my right.
More.
More?
More. Okay.
Okay. I had a very simple V-shape shape, and it was connected. So I started with something...
Can you hold it up closer?
I was starting with something that simple and playing with it. But there was another element that was from a totally different painting, and that was the I say a different painting, but it was actually a drawing. So I had this shape here, and it was I played with it this way up, actually. It did appear in the ladder that way up, in a smaller version, but I liked the dynamics of it, just hanging there in the sky like a jellyfish. So I was playing with those two different ideas. Actually, most of the time, I was playing with the idea of very big trees like sequoia in that kind of wedge shape with bridges to a land mass. And then it seemed natural to put the jellyfish structure in the sky. It was, yeah, it just came out of that, playing with the geometry on paper. At the moment, we're working on a fourth book, and I think I'll put those sketches in because I like the evolution of that design from something very vague into something, well, a finished painting.
Someone wants to know if you're going to do any masks.
Am I going to do any masks?
With your designs on.
Well, Freyja just did. She got a lot of flack, people telling her masks are no good. Well, when you're going into a bank, they disguise you.
And that's what they were for.
I don't know. My feeling is that when all this is over, and I can't imagine that's any time soon, I think, I'm guessing now, but I think when governments think it's okay for people to start socializing again, it'll be when they can produce enough masks that everybody wears masks. And they will then say, masks, when everybody wears masks, it's safe to go out again. So I think masks are going to be with us for the foreseeable future. So what can I say? You know, T-shirts might take a back seat to masks when it comes to tour merchandising.
I've just had another question. Would you consider doing designs for women's clothing?
Would I consider it? Yeah, why not?
And what about the Valentino collaboration? Did you enjoy that?
I enjoyed the Valentino collaboration, but to be honest, it's a stretch to call it a collaboration. Pier Paolo, I liked him. Yeah, we got on, but I didn't spend hours sitting with him in the studio, as it was originally intended, as a matter of fact. It was much more distant than that. It was almost as brutally simple as a licensing agreement. But I did like it, and I was impressed when I saw the clothes. When I first saw them, I thought, this is a bit fuzzy. And when I saw it close up, I thought, my God, it's embroidered. And that really impressed me. The quality of that was impressive. And yeah, it was a buzz. A world I hadn't really been in.
There's some people offering to take your discarded sketches off your hands.
You will be shot.
Would you consider doing album art for modern bands?
Yes. I enjoy the process of designing and painting. If somebody said to me, what would you like to be doing this time next year? I'd like to think, I'd like to have just built a village and be sitting back having a cup of tea thinking that was fun. I don't want to give up painting, but I don't want to not do the architecture.
Oh, the comments are coming thick and fast, and I almost get to the end of the question. Would you design furniture? Okay, I'm hoping that question was just, would you design furniture? Because now it's gone. Would you design furniture?
Well, I did design furniture. Furniture was something, David Pye, who was my professor at the Royal College of Art, who was a brilliant philosopher of design. I was completely taken by surprise about what an intelligent and insightful person he was, because that wasn't my experience of the upper echelons of the art school situation. And he was prepared to let me play around with my ideas about architecture. But he did say, you know, you are in a furniture school, so do some of that as well. So I did. I did the sea urchin chair. In 1966, I had an exhibition of the sea urchin chair, which is sea urchin shape, but it was engineered inside so it would collapse and give you proper lumbar support and pop out again. And I did a lot of, I did quite a lot of furniture design. I liked it because it was human scale, literally. A piece of furniture is often the size and, not shape, the size of a human being. So it was a nice sculptural scale to work in.
I just saw a question that I found quite interesting. Someone asked, what would you consider as your greatest achievement and failure in cover art?
My greatest achievement and failure?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you. No. Thinking about it, God, I don't know. I would think the greatest achievement for me was the fact it got me painting, and I love some of the painting very much. Failure. Almost always it came from not saying no quick enough. And the realization that I had to get it wrong to realize how wrong it was when somebody comes to me with an idea. Because I'm not a craftsman executing other people's ideas. I do both. And when I'm working with somebody else's idea, I don't have it in my head enough to make the marks, to surround it in a way that will make it come alive. I can only do that when I've lived it and it's mine. So my biggest failures have been when I've tried very hard sometimes to interpret ideas that have been given to me. So I don't work that way now.
Okay, I'm going to call this the last question, and then other questions we can take on to the next video, and hopefully at that point have better audio. But the last question I'm going to ask from these is, what are your hobbies outside painting?
My hobbies? Painting is my hobby, come on. That's also my profession. I don't know. When I was more active, still do. I love walking. I love climbing. I love mountains. I love deserts. And I love being in those places. I don't see that as a hobby. I see that as a critical piece of spiritual refreshment. I'll have to think about hobbies. I tend to think all my hobbies become work at some point. Not work in the sense that I don't like it, but they become something I make as part of my career. So I don't have hobbies outside. Well, hang on a minute. I have a model train. Yes, there we go. I love steam trains. Is that an answer? I actually had the opportunity to drive one. I can't remember, was it a birthday present or a Christmas present? Freyja, who's right here, sent me a painting she did of an engine where she and her mum had bought me an hour's tuition on driving this steam train. That was amazing. I loved it. Yes, that was a couple of years ago, but it was pretty cool.
Can you explain what you'll be doing next session?
Yes, this, I guess what I did here was pretty much nothing. If, I'd have to say, well, I made a few pages of very rudimentary doodles. But by the next time we do this, which is the day after tomorrow, I'm hoping that I will completely nailed some of the parameters. It could be the subject matter, which that would be nice, or it could be just the treatment of the subject matter, which would still be very critical to the final thing, and the subject matter could solidify a bit later. But I'm hoping the subject matter will be nailed, and probably the treatment. I'm just working out the details of it. So it will be a painting. It'll be much more about painting and less about philosophy and doodles. And if it's complicated, which I'm kind of got my fingers crossed it won't be, there might need to be careful drawings, more detailed and careful drawings. And the challenge for both Freyja and I, between now and then, is to prize some bandwidth out of OpenReach. So, yes, definitely wet stuff, paint.
I think someone just commented, Freyja, could you do some videos from now till Friday and post so we can see the progress? I will try.
Yeah, Friday's only day after tomorrow.
I don't know that he'll have done that much.
I'll come with some so that there's definitely, you can see in front of the camera it evolving. I didn't expect to do that tonight. I wanted to see the whole process come about. And for me, by Friday, this will have a bunch more pages done. I'll have transferred to working in this sketchbook, because this sketchbook is actually in my studio. I don't have to worry about carrying it around. It's much bigger, and it's made of tracing paper, so I can play with ideas better in it. So this is where I expect to be with the sketches, and here, and probably working on watercolor pads, maybe with watercolor, but more likely with acrylic. Okay, Freyja is telling me I've exhausted your patience, so thank you very much.
No, I was just going to say, okay, so Friday at 7 p.m, same as today. A lot of you keep commenting the audio is really bad, and I don't know why that is. We're going to try and fix that, obviously, before Friday. Both of us are terrible at this, so obviously this has to be enjoyable, but bear with us while we figure out what the issues are, and hopefully it will be much better next time.
Yes, we're going to try and record directly to the computer.
Yeah, but thank you guys for saying, you're sticking with us.
Yeah.
We're doing our best.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.